But it's possible that we no more love, no more pretending. Now my life is just beginning. Maybe, and it's all because when you get tired of running, I know where you can go. You had me there for so long. Now here is sorry. Lord, you were true, and the truth will set you. You'll be so free.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وبسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, something moves me to ask you a question. Have I told you lately that I love you? Hey, you married brothers, you gotta do that. Just pop up and just say, yeah, hey, have I told you lately that I love you? It goes well. Bit of free advice. It's been love. But I'm saying this to you. I love you. You give me an opportunity to offload some of this. And sometimes when there are things that I want to say, want to tell, want you to know, and I haven't had the opportunity to say it, I just can't wait for the opportunity to say it to you. And you always give me, by your presence, you give me the opportunity to say some things to you that I really want to say, because mashallah, this is my life. This is my life. And my life is sharing this as much as access to me, sharing with you. This is our inheritance. This is our inheritance. And this is our life. This is our future. This is our potential being made available to us to become a capacity, a capability, rather. So that's it. So I love you. And I love you for being here. And I love you for being you. I love it. And I mean that to each one of you individually. Okay. That being said, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. Push one on your phone. Come on through. And we'll move on with what we have to say today. With Allah's help and with your contribution. Push one on your phone. Come on through. Got our brother Mark. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Imam Fahim Shoaib, and your very astute radio listening audience. Mark Shahi from the STL, Gateway City of St. Louis, Show Me State of Missouri. Want to say Alhamdulillah, the praise and thanks belongs to Allah first and foremost. The last statement you made, Imam Fahim, really touched me. And I want to say to you, I love you in the cause of Allah and what it is that He's blessed you to do. And I also want to say, when you said that, it reminded me that 2 weeks before our leader and teacher, Imam Mohammed, passed, I was blessed to be on the plane with him and his wife, Brother Rafi, also the head of security at that time, Brother Zambezi. And he was on his way back to Chicago. I and another partner of brothers who since transitioned was on our way back to St. Louis, and we had a connecting flight. And when we got off, I hugged Imam Mohammed. I said to my leading teacher, Brother Imam, I love you, and I appreciated all that you do for us. And he said to me, he said, yes, and I love you too, and I appreciate all that you do for the community. I'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum. I know that probably took half of my 3 minutes.
No, go ahead. We good. Go ahead. You understand.
I was just touched to say that because in traffic listening, I was listening to you, but I felt you because oftentimes we have the opportunity, but we fail to take the opportunity to say that. And we never want to take anybody for granted in this community. And so we should take that opportunity to do what you just did. I just had to say that. So if that took my time, then
go ahead.
But I really appreciate. I'm really enjoying this series on how to be an ummah. 2 things I want to say is that you're using the Quran to make those connections, like in Baqarah 148. What was the other 49:13 in the Quran to show and illustrate that. Very important. Imam Mohammed said that how we learn anything and everything about what it is that we are studying. This is scholarly work in terms of kalaka, sawa, kalara, and also hana, in terms of the created form, and everything has a form and how it connects to other forms, sawa, and then its process going from immaturity to maturity, or from simple to complex, with the guidance of Allah in terms of reaching this destiny. And of course, this is the destiny that Allah wants for His human creation to reach, and what it is that you're given in a very scholarly way. I want to say that first and foremost. And then I also want to remind the people that last week, and some may not know this, but 1945, I think it was the 130 Congress, I may not have that correct, but they actually voted and made January the 5th, in 1945, Dr. George Washington Carver Day. So when you were speaking about outstanding intellect, as Imam Mohammed said, the scientist is to see into this, there was no greater scientist than Dr. George Washington Carver. And what made him so unique was that he acknowledged Almighty God, Allah. He did that. He would refer to God as Mr. Creator. And he would say that the plants, that the creation spoke to him. It spoke to him. One last thing I want to say before I get off, a master key that Imam Mohammed gave us in the class, is this, that Allah created the intellect, that He created the intellect for His natural creation, and He created the natural creation for the intellect, for it to engage the intellect and to read the signs. And then Allah gives us the mercy in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he gave the Quran in terms of revelation. And then he challenges us, even in the revelation, thinking is a benefit to you. I'll stop with that. Thank you so much for giving me the extended time. I know the protocol.
No, it's good. No, it's good. It's good. No, I appreciate the acknowledgement, but you always contribute. Your contribution is solid. It's not you're not wasting time. You there's meat on those bones that you put on the plate, bro. I got you. We good.
Okay, I know you. I know you do it. I already know you know where I'm coming from.
All right.
But when you're on a production, you only have so much time.
That's right.
To say you want to be concise, but you want to contribute something, and that's always my objective for listening and to try to make a valuable contribution to what I hear in your cook bars, and just to let you know that it's resonating with me. And I think that's very important when we give cook bars, presentations, lectures, workshops, whatever it is. You want to get some feedback.
Yeah.
You want to know. You can feel like you're doing a really outstanding job, but you want somebody to speak back, talk back to me, let me know.
True. That's true.
What I'm doing, maybe I need to improve upon something. So no, it's resonating with me. If nobody else have anything to say, when I listen, I'm always gonna press one. So and usually I'm the first one to do that.
Yeah,
but my mother was responsible for that. She told me always keep your hand in the air. If you don't know, if you do know, if you don't know, raise your hand to ask a question. If you do know, raise your hand to answer the question. So thank you once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Always a great contribution from our brother Mark. Alhamdulillah. All right. We got Mo St. Louis out here. Assalamu alaikum, brother Imam. Imam.
Are you referring to me, brother Imam?
Oh, you East St. Louis? You don't count that as St. Louis? What's up? Where we at?
No. I didn't know you had another 314 because we got
you're 618. Yeah.
Enjoyed the football, brother Imam, and definitely had intent before you open up to call in because the season that we're in. I can tell that you had a satisfaction in having completed a package in what you shared, and you did. One of the things I want to do, I want to share this, but everyone don't have the new technology phones.
Okay.
And I've had this concern, and I often make sure that our pioneers that don't have that technology, they still using the CDs, and that's the advancement from the cassette. I make sure they get that information. So I'm going to communicate with you, but that's what my intention to do is to make this available to them because as you described with that mold, I appreciate and feel feed from those workers. And as we do, we connect with our young people that are moving forward. And I see that in the same expression within our community as you describing the mold.
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence. It's praise be to Allah with our pioneers getting ill. Allah bless me, brother Imam, to get concerned to go and forage and see the connection of mycelium, and our turkey tail mushroom and reishi mushroom. Just like penicillin comes from mold, and from that you described, that is such a health for the human being. So you connecting that with Hajj, and going to reach out to you because we have academics evolving in our community that are expressing in higher environments our community's picture and our imam's contribution.
Yes.
And you are very key in that. And such persons I've been blessed to come in contact with, and I know when to pass on that communication.
Yes.
So we should utilize these resources within our community.
Absolutely.
That not only you represent, but you do in the most significant way because we're living in a blessed time and it's going international. And that's part of that you also described.
Absolutely.
So I thank you for allowing me to have the expression continue, and we'll continue to benefit. And alhamdulillah, things are really looking well in this season. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We have to push. We have to push our young people, everybody. When you hit that 71, and I know there's others, of course, that are older. By the grace of Allah, everybody's young now. By and large, humorously stated. But at the same time, the point is that we have those that haven't reached 40, and those even wait, I got no sound. What's going on? We good, Eric. Check it out. I'm good. Eric, you should be able to hear me now. Okay. Well, if there's no sound, it don't have anything to do with me. But moving right along, the yes, we definitely we gotta lock into and feed into and send our energy, send our spirit, send our resources, send our commitment into uh, these young people, and especially the knowledge that we've gained by experience, which I emphasized in the khutbah from yesterday. The knowledge that we've gained, we have to transmit that. We have to transmit that because that's their inheritance. That's knowledge gained by experience that they don't have to wait for the experience to gain that knowledge. It's a sadaqah. It's an investment. It's a giving to them of their inheritance. If they're connected with us and they're connected with our past, connected with our history, and also and especially they're connected with our destiny, and they're connected with us presently, then we owe it to them and to ourselves to make sure that as much as possible of what we have, we can offload, download, upload, whichever is the proper direction to them. Right? We have to do that. We have to do that. Brother Eric, if you're not getting any sound, I can't account for it. I'm gonna go ahead and move on with the subject matter. So I'm just gonna put my raw notes. I say raw notes, just plain documented notes up on the screen. So those of you blog talk, you'll be able to hear it. Of course, I'll just be reading the notes off. But and I also when I do it like this, also I encourage you. Maybe you already do it, but maybe some people don't think about it. But what you should do. So when I put just plain notes up here, since I don't send the notes out directly, since I don't send the notes out directly, then you should do a screenshot or something like that. Do a screenshot, or if you're seeing it on YouTube and Facebook, then you should, just when you go back over it, pause, etc., and just read through the notes. So this is something of the script that I'm doing now. I'm not looking at the screen, and right now I'm operating on the assumption that everybody is hearing me. That's the assumption that I'm operating on. Those of you who are closer to me and you have closer contacts with me, i.e., you have my number, text me if I'm not being heard, because I don't want to keep going if I'm not being heard. But if I am being heard, you don't need to say anything. You don't need to say anything. I'm good. I gotta go. Let's move on. Let's move on with what we have to bring right now. All right. So the intellect is an attribute of the soul. Myself, my consciousness, whatever, my own sense is saying I'm hard pressed to make sure that this imagery, that this picture of the universal soul, nafsun wahida, it pre-exists. Not only does it pre-exist our physical body, it pre-exists the universe itself. And that's from the reading of the first verse of the fourth surah. I'm not going to go back over that. So the point is that the creation is a womb for the expression of the universal soul, which is that's Allah's intention. It was and is his intention that nafsun wahida gain expression in, I'm going to use the term real time, space time, in actuality. He created it and transformed it into a reality in the universe itself, and then we as bodies come to be expressions of that. So let me just stick with my notes here. Now, the intellect is not an organ. It is an inherent faculty or capability that Allah has endowed human beings with, which enables the human being to understand and to comprehend. Shortstop, real quick. There's, well, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. Let's go on with the reading right here. The source of the intellect is not a specific organ in the body, not even the brain. Okay. Though it's not the source of the intellect, the brain accommodates and facilitates the activities of the intellect in this world, right? So, intellect doesn't come from the brain, okay? Intellect doesn't come from the brain, but the brain accommodates and facilitates the activities of the intellect. So there's the soul that exists separate and apart in reality from the body. It exists separate and apart from the body. Let me go see some of these things that come to my mind right now. Okay, anybody that's had a major operation where you had to go under anesthesia. You had a major operation where you had to go under anesthesia, and they had to cut on you, they had to break bones, they had to do whatever it is they had to do. Okay, well, what was going on? Where were you when that was going on, quote unquote? Where were you when that was going? You weren't feeling it, you weren't sensing it, you weren't experiencing it, and you weren't dead. So where was quote unquote the consciousness? Where, right? So the point is, you were still existing, and your body was being operated on, and you were experiencing things which, had you had a presence there, would have been absolutely, positively, unbearably painful. In fact, when in accidents and other traumatic experiences, the body goes into shock. Right? That's what it's called. Body goes into shock. What does it go into shock? It shuts down whatever it is that would be actually experiencing the pain associated with whatever that trauma was. So God has said, oh, let's turn the switch off. Turn the switch off, right? What is switching off? Switching off this consciousness. Where does it go, right? The point is, just understand that it's our, that is our reality. The body is not our reality, because our reality can be separated from the body, and the body can be operated on absent our conscious experience of it. Okay, so just keep working with that if it's not reaching you. But that's the case. That's the case. So not our body is not the source of it. But now when okay, post anesthesia, now you're back, right? So you're back, and so now the things, thought, understanding, comprehension, etc., those things can happen now because the brain has been re-engaged by, I'm going to call it soul right now. The brain has been re-engaged by the soul, and so now you're experiencing again, right? You're having an experience again because the brain switched back on, and now the brain, okay, let's go. The brain is saying, let's do what we do, right? So it accommodates and it facilitates the activities of the intellect, understanding, comprehension, thought, and every other thing that we experience, imagination, and all those other things. Now they can be experienced. All right, so let's read the sentence again. The source of the intellect is not the specific organ in the body. not even the brain. That was a part of the sign of the slime mold and the parameciums. Like they are doing the same things, in of course not quantitatively, but qualitatively, knowing, learning, acting, searching, etc. These single cell creatures are doing that, and they have no brains. So then the logic says that, well, then brains aren't necessary to do those things. Now, for us as human beings to do things at the level they don't do things qualitatively like what we do literally with a brain. But the point is that there are those things that are like what we do with the brain that are also done by lower forms of life that have no brain. So therefore, the brain is not exclusively the source for those kinds of things. That's what the sign is saying. So it says, don't depend on or think exclusively that the source of your consciousness, the source of your being, the source of your reality is the brain. It's just a part of the apparatus that's used to function in this world. That's the way, excuse me, Allah's created it. All right, so even though it's not the source of the intellect, the brain accommodates and facilitates the activities of the intellect in the world. You have to have a brain to do the things that you have to do in this world. But the limits of what's possible to be done is not based on the brain itself. There's something that transcends the brain. Quick thing, just like intuition, right? Intuition, just as an example. Intuition, that's information that comes into your awareness, right? That comes into your consciousness. But it wasn't something that you, quote unquote, computed up to, or you uh, earned by experience. That's what intuition is not tuition, right? Tuition is you got to pay for this education. You got to pay tuition, right? Well, intuition is something that you get that you didn't pay for. And in similar fashion, there's knowledge that comes to us not through our brain per se, but it comes to us through, to be understood, that soul, that transcendent reality of which intellect is only an attribute. All right. So though it's not the source of the intellect, the brain accommodates and facilitates the activities of the intellect in this world. There's an analogy. I hope it works for you, but it keeps coming back to me every time I think about this part of the conversation. Okay, a grocery store. You're in a grocery store. Grocery store has shelves, and I'm particularly thinking about the bread aisle. It applies to anything. But for some reason, the bread aisle and the bread shelf comes to mind in the grocery store. And okay, so you go into the store. And so you're looking for a loaf of bread. Okay, you go to the shelf where you expect to see the bread, and you get the loaf of bread. There it is, loaf of bread. Buy, go home, etc. Right? All right. So, question: did the shelf where you found the loaf of bread, did it produce the loaf of bread? You found it there, but is that where it was made? The loaf of bread wasn't made on the shelf, but whenever you go to the store and you go in there and you find the bread on the shelf, but you don't say that the shelf makes the bread. The shelf accommodates and holds that bread for you, so that when you finally do go into the store, you go to the shelf, take the bread. Question: did the shelf make the bread? No. The bread was made somewhere else. But it was put on the shelf. You may have no idea as to where the bread was actually made or when or all that. But the point is that every time you look for bread, it's on that shelf, right? So the mistake is made if you think that, the shelf makes the bread. Excuse me. So, likewise, you have thoughts, you have ideas, you have this consciousness, right? And you always find it, quote unquote, in the brain, right? You have this, you have the EEG, electroencephalogram. You can have these fMRIs, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and hook you up. And whenever you're thinking, then this lights up, that lights up, that. So you can be led to believe that the source of thought is the activity of the brain. Okay, you'll be making the same mistake as thinking that the source of the bread is the bakery shelf. Yeah, no, the source of the bread is not the bakery shelf. The the bakery shelf is just where you get the bread from, but it's made somewhere else. All right. All right. If you can understand that, inshallah, if it's helpful, then you should understand that the shelf in that analogy is your brain. The shelf is your brain, and it facilitates your access to the bread, right? Okay. So, for as far as the uh, uh, or the activity, the resources that the brain makes available to you. So the brain makes things available to us. The brain makes, you know, comprehension and understanding and other things, logic, what have you. It makes it possible because it's like the shelf. If you don't have that shelf, you won't have that experience, and so therefore you won't have those things. I'm gonna have to get away from this, but the idea is the shelf doesn't make the bread. The brain doesn't make the intellect. The brain doesn't make the intellect. The intellect is from another source, and the source of the intellect is your soul. The soul is the source of the intellect. The brain just serves it up. Let's keep going. All right. So our real existence, I want to you want to know yourself in reality. Our real existence is the soul. Understand this. Muslims believe in life after death, right? And so the Muslims believe in life after death. So that means that whatever and whoever we are continues to exist after the body ceases to function. After the body ceases to function, we're not non-existent. We're still existing, all right? And as we point to the verse 172, in the hadith of the Prophet, etc., we know that the soul has a life before the body and the soul has a life after the body. So the body is not the life of the soul. The soul has a life before the body. The soul has a life while the body is present on earth, and the soul has a life after the body ceases to function. All right? So our reality is our soul. That is our reality. This body, this encasement, etc., it just serves us while we're in three-dimensional space and time. That's it. It just serves us, but we transcend it. We're before it. We are, quote unquote, at the time of our body, and we continue to exist after the body ceases to function in this space. All right. The body, again, just like we talked about the bread and the shelf, and now the shelf is not the source of the bread. The body isn't the source of our soul. Be clear on that. The body isn't the source of our soul. Let's go with the sunnah. The body isn't the source of our soul. All right? In the hadith, when we talk about Adam alayhi salatu wasalam being put into a form, and the hadith, the translators of it will give you the idea that it's 40 years. He's putting that and stayed in that state for 40 years. It's just 40 periods, and really 40 is just a symbol of maturity. It's just as 40 is a symbol of maturity. According to the Quran, maturity is reached at 40 years. So in any case, so the 40 is just a symbol of maturity. So Adam's form was in that state, just literally. I mean, based on our reading of it, we know that we're talking about abstracts as we talk about these things. But the point is that the abstract is giving us a concrete idea, meaning that see that there's something of whatever substance of a given form that has to achieve a certain maturity before the spirit of Allah can be put into it by Allah's design. And what it's saying is that you're not going to get X, Y, or Z until you are mature. You're not going to get whatever it is we're talking about. In this case, we're talking about the soul operating the soul operating in the body, the soul operating in our space and time until you get to maturity, right? And that's what the 40 is, right? Mashallah, unfortunately, mashallah, I can't help but think about they started having the hip hop, the gangster rap crew said, man, I gotta give me a 40. Gotta give me a 40, right? And so it's like intoxicants, right? To kill off the force and the power and the arrival of the maturity of the brain through intoxicants. So you get a 40, but you'll never get 240. Moving right along. So the body isn't the source of our soul, and the brain is not the source of our intellect. So keep those things paired up, right? Just take a step at a time. The body is not the source of the soul. Just ask yourself, is that true? Once you establish that, yes, it's true. The body is not the source of the soul. Okay. Now, at the next level, therefore, you can also say the brain is not the source of the intellect. Just like the soul is different from the body, the intellect is different from the brain. The intellect is different from the brain. The soul is abstract, body is concrete. Intellect is abstract, brain is concrete. The real thing or the reality is the soul and the intellect, taking it further. And remember, the intellect is not concrete. The intellect, the source of the intellect is not the organ. The organ, now in this case, we're talking about the brain, it's just there to facilitate and accommodate that attribute of the soul called intellect for operation in creation, right? Body, brain, soul, intellect. Intellect is connected in reality, an expression of the soul. So I'm saying go past the brain and think about the intellect as an attribute of the soul and imagine, which is our goal, that the soul in its maturing, it gets greater and greater capacity to use its own attributes, just like with our bodies. When we were babies crawling around, then after we learn how to crawl, then we learn how to walk, then we have to learn how to walk, then we learn how to run, blah, blah. So these are different capacities coming into maturity for fullness. Okay, now that's happening with the body. Same thing also happens with the soul. The soul is an abstract body. The soul is an abstract body. One more time. The soul is an abstract body. It is a body that is trying to, in our lifetime, come to mature expression while we're still here in the bodies. That's what we should be aspiring to. Look, we got a short period of time. We're going to be here on the earth. The body is a womb for the soul's development and expression in this world. So bring the soul to its maturity. Blessed is he that causes it to grow. Bring the soul, the abstract body, to its maturity, because it is in and through that maturity that you get the blessing, the benefit, the work, the service of the material creation, and also greater service and utilization of the potential that Allah has put in you. So it's like life is a big gift and life is a big opportunity for us to experience in this world the richness and the wondrousness that Allah has put in the world and in ourselves. It's like, let's take this phrase, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Excuse me. You only have a short period of time. It's short. Wallahi, it's short. So don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Acknowledge you are an abstract body in reality. Acknowledge that abstract body it's full of potential, but you have to bring that potential to maturity in order to, in this lifetime, get the benefit of what's available to you in the creation and in yourself. And that's the role of the intellect. The role of the intellect is to put you in a position to get the full benefit of life, right? So you already know. You think about the hadith where Allah created the intellect, told us stand up, stood up, sit down, went back. He said, I've created nothing. Some hadith says, more beloved to me than you, others not more useful than you. Point is, that intellect is very, very powerful. So, to put it lightly, but it has to come to a maturity. And that's the goal. So we can say that the intellect is an attribute of the soul expressed through the body, brain, mind. So now there is a role for these physical apparatus. So this physical apparatus that is our body. You have the body, right? You have the brain. As the body matures, then the brain matures. And then there's the mind that comes in consequence of the functioning of the brain, right? So mind is something that is born out of experience in the world and maturity of the body. Intellect is the spirit that, we'll put it that way, that spirit, that attribute of the soul that comes into a mind that comes to maturity. Okay, so there's a maturity for the body, there's a maturity for the brain, and there's a maturity for the mind. So the mind is still separate from the soul and the intellect. So, mashallah, I do think I can share another thing now, since I believe that's clear. Excuse me. Let's see. Thank you for your patience. I hope I can get to it. Come on. It will be worth the wait if I succeed in locating it. All right, well, mashallah, I guess I won't be able to do it today. I'm going to have to get better at. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Alhamdulillah. Great. All right. Coming right up. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for your patience. So let's go. Let's get back to. All right. So I got to take that down. And I got to put something else back up. All right, there you go. All right, so this is a very important picture. Fahim, what are you doing? Okay. All right, so let's just look at this picture right here. Now, part of one of my regular sayings, and I believe you should adopt it too, in order to drive your study and to drive your study, right? How do you know when you're finished, quote unquote? You don't know the subject until you know the object. You don't know the subject until you know the object. What that means is, okay, you're trying to understand something. Until you can come up with a concrete analogy, image, picture, illustration, which means abstract, but let's just stay with concrete, image, illustration, analogy, say this is like that. Until you can get that satisfies it, you're not completely mature in that particular subject matter, right? And some things takes years, obviously, to do that. So here's something. I just talked about the maturity of the body, the brain, and the mind, right? Now, in order to get to the top, you can see at that outer circle, Khalifa is that's the goal. When Allah says, "Inni ja'ilu fil ardi Khalifa," I'm making in the earth a Khalifa. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. That the entirety of actually the life of the universe and the life of the earth and the product intended by Allah for the universe and for the earth is inside that statement, Inni ja'ilu fil ardi Khalifa. All right. And there are repetitive cycles. Allah says He's the one who creates and who repeats, right? So things that happen on a lower level, the same thing has to happen again on the next level. And the same thing has to happen again on the next level, right? That's what spiritual means. It's spiraling, right? It's spiraling upwards. It's spiritual, spiraling upwards. So there's growth. So the body has to go through its cycle to reach its maturity, and then it will give birth to something. And then that thing that it gives birth to, it has to go through those stages, and then it will give birth to something. And then that thing has to go through its cycle. And in this case, we're saying this is the end. I haven't put the specific verses with this, but they are available. The point is, so let's start in terms of the body, right? So 23:12 through 14, that's one that comes, right away. It's just irregular. It's just central to this whole process. Won't go through it. We've written a book about it, and you've heard about it many times. But you'll see that there is 6 levels, and then it says "Thumma anshaknahu khalqan akhar," right? The khalqan akhar is another creature. I'm saying to you that that other creature is the brain. Now there are many other ways to construct it, but I'm saying that that next thing that comes with the maturity of the body, at the i.e., and the maturity of the brain, because that starts another cycle. Fully mature body, mature brain. Now that brain has 6 stages that it has to go through. There's a picture here. I'll give it to you real quick without spending a lot of time elaborating on it. These these six levels here are the 6 levels that the brain, moving from cerebral cortex to the allocortex, the mesocortex, and then of course you have the cortex that's broken up itself into the neocortex that's broken up into these different areas that operate in the brain. So our brain areas, our brain regions that are all dedicated to specific, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, moving, memory, et cetera, those are the attributes of a mature brain, right? And there are 6 stages that that brain, to come to that maturity, has to go through. All right, that's in order for it to become a mature brain, right? Our body has to go through what the body has to go through to become a mature body. Then that mature body does the things that it's capable of doing, right? Well, then the same thing happens with the brain. The brain has to go through what it has to go through in order for it to reach its brain maturity, and now it can do what it's supposed to do. It has to get mature, then it can take things to the next level. I'll just read the note here. Neurons in the neocortex are typically arranged in 6 layers, which are distinguished from one another by differences in cell type and cell density. All right. So going back. So the point is, so the body matures and it produces the brain. The brain matures and it produces, quote unquote, the mind, right? Very short, very short, quick, so you can just hold on to it. Understand this, brother and sister. The mind, of course, their innate capabilities. When you go through, let me go ahead and just remind you and show you. It's like I'm breezing through just in comments what I cover in the book, the Clear Path to Human Development, Human Science, and Scriptural Language. Everything I'm breezing through right now, I go through in detail in the book. And so what it is 6 stages of cognitive development. Actually 7 stages of cognitive development, but the point is the last stage represents a transition into the next phase. So you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that 7 is another phase. It's the product of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th is the final product of those 6 movements, right? Thumman shaknahu khalkan akhar. That's the product of all the previous 6 movements, right? Okay, so brain, when the brain goes through its six layers, six layers, now it has given birth to the mind, right? Now, as the mind operates, Quran 17 chapter 84th verse, everyone acts according to the way that they've been socialized. There's a shakila, right? Shakila. So each one of us, our mind is the personalization of our brain. Your brain and your life experiences gave you the mind that you have. My brain, my life experiences gives me the mind that I have. Everybody's brain and their life experiences gives them the mind that they have. So the mind is a product of the functioning of the brain in the world, right? And there are, there's certain mechanism, attributes, qualities, capabilities of the mind. Now, then the choice becomes, what you put your mind to. You have the mind, so you have high IQ gangsters, high IQ physicists. That's it. Okay, so the brain goes through its stages, and that produces the mind. Right now, the mind, it has phases that it goes through. Those same things that are seen in concrete terms, both in the biological, bodily stage evolution, and then the mental stage evolution. Now, those movements have uh, well, gotta say it, abstract corollaries, right? So there are things that when you think about the body, the brain, and the mind, you think about them in very concrete ways, which is what most of the material scientists they only want to respect. They only want to respect the material dimensions of body, brain, mind. But see, once the maturity happens, I have to say, once the maturity happens in a believer, once the maturity, all these things we're talking about, once that maturity, that maturity happens in a believer, the believer pierces the veil between. I'm just using that language so you understand. We believe in the unseen, right? We believe in the unseen. I don't want you to think whatever Illuminati or cult or anything else. I'm just using that term. The point is,
60 seconds.
Abraham, who's an example of what I'm talking about, who's the model of what I'm talking about, and the name for what I'm talking about, Abraham, he did all that. Everything that I'm talking about, excuse me, then a little crumb. Abraham, he did all this, right? I ended the khutbah talking about he had to be squeezed, and not he, the prophet, peace be upon him, said the prophet had to be squeezed 3 times. Okay, well, that's just a sign, that's a reality, and a sign of what has to happen to everybody who reaches their fullness. Right? You will definitely get squeezed if you evolve and mature. And in order to mature, you're going to have to be squeezed. Okay?
10
because
seconds.
That pressure brings out of you what is latent in you, and that pressure is what brings out. But let's go and stay with Abraham, so you can have very clear Quranic connections with what I'm saying. So when Abraham, star, moon, sun, those are his 3 squeezes, right? Those are his 3 phases. Those are his body, brain, mind transitions, right? And then he went beyond. This is what I'm saying. Then he went beyond whatever the body could bring, whatever the brain could bring, whatever the mind could bring. Then he transcended. And that's when he saw behind the material creation a reality of which star, moon, sun are only signs. Star, moon, sun, they're only signs. But you have to come to the point to be able to read those signs so that you can climb literally like a ladder. You climb literally to what transcends the physical, to be able to see behind. That's see intis, right? See into. It also means seeing behind. Muslims, yu'minuna bil ghaib. We believe in the unseen. So we're going to have to finish up. But I want you to understand that there's a clear track, Allahu Alam, but there's a clear track to everything we're saying. Listen, brother and sister. Remember, God told us and tells us, it's always there in the Quran. It says, this life is gurur. This life is gurur. God is saying, this life is an illusion. This life is an illusion. He tells it to us straight, right? But until you're able to comprehend what that means in quote unquote real terms, then you continue to live in, and it's gurur, but it is a reality for those who are living at that level, right? So yeah, that's it. But you have to get to the point where you can get beyond the illusion that is this life. But that can't happen until the maturity of body, maturity of brain, maturity of mind, traveling the path that Allah has ordered for the soul to travel, so that it can live in the world, but also be transcended to it. Can't you hear Jesus' statement in there? I'm in the world, but I'm not of it. Okay, so that's what it's going to be today. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his grace. We just put a comma on it, and inshallah we'll get back to it at another time. Let's see. Let's look at a couple of notes before we absolutely check out. Let's see. Zakia Mohammed, Assalamu alaikum. Hakeem Bilal, did I see you? Hakeem, did I see you had a birthday recently, my brother? Alhamdulillah. Well, happy you had a birthday sometime. You're still here. So, happy belated birthday. I think it was just something recently. Alhamdulillah, my brother, Mahdi, Assalamu alaikum. Long time soldier. You need to stop by and holler at your brother sometime, man. I always get say, I know you always checking in here too, so I ain't no problem. Love it. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Would it be correct to conclude that when man becomes Khalifa, he has reached maturity of about yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And the answer is that is it. That's the goal. That's the destiny. I keep talking about, and mashallah, Allahu alam, whenever, if ever we get a chance to get it, if you can take that concept, the idea of what I've said, go look at the story. I'm gonna tell y'all again because I want you to do this because Suleiman and Dawood, his father, Allah's peace and blessing be on both of them. They fulfilled what I'm talking about. They got there, right? They got there. Let's see. I'm trying to look for the. Oh yeah. Okay, here you go, y'all. Yeah, go back and read through. At some point in time, we're going to take up this whole subject because I'm looking at this full list of things that are realized just from this set of verses that I'm bringing to your attention right now. Go and read and study the 27th chapter, 15th through, I think it's 40. No, more than 40. 27, 15 to 44. Read that story. And of course, FYI, you will know it includes the story of the throne of Saba. Saba is 7, okay, and it's feminine. But you have to spend some time with it. So 27, 15 through 44. That's the Solomon piece, and then David and Solomon. Read the 38 chapter, 38 Quran, 30 through 40. Spend some time with that and think about the kind of things that I'm talking about here. And I know I should resist this, but I'm gonna run through real quick right now a list of things that can be abstracted by the grace of Allah, with the help of Allah, by the permission of Allah, from what I'm pointing out to you. I'm going to try not to elaborate. I'm just trying to leave it for the record for right now. And when we get back to it, and it can kind of help you feel your way into getting a sense of what's being revealed in this regard by those selections that I'm pointing you to. Here, real quick. So I have a little entitlement of what accounts for Suleiman's power under Allah, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Growth. I'm just reading a list now, without elaboration, inshallah. What accounts for it? Growth and purification principles that are involved in this proper worship of Allah, not being motivated purely for material wealth and power, the love of the good, and the knowledge of the powers and the laws of the heavens and the earth, the knowledge of the nature of creatures, the knowledge of the book, the righteous and disciplined use of personal power and force, and mutual consultation. That's just a list. And I have verses and references for everything that I have here. And it's abstracted from that section of verses that we talked about. So, I mean, there's a lifetime of knowledge in just those sections right there. So, yes, so they are examples of those who have realized that caliphal state, they are examples for us. And inshallah, that's what we strive for. So alhamdulillah, dear brothers and sisters, thank you so much for your time, your attention, your presence. And again, I say, I love you. May the grace of Allah be upon you. Make dua for me. I'll make dua for you. And may Allah help us and bless us to reach the destiny, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Let's see. Try to check out properly. All right.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.